Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and this is Craig Smith. I'm reporting right now. We are live at the Grand Hotel in Stockholm watching the Nobel Prize award ceremonies. Right now, Ray Weiss, Kip Thorne, and Barry Barish are being awarded for physics, Nobel Prize for discovering the first gravity waves from the merger of two black holes. I'm here with Dr. Michael Smith, who worked on the LIGO project for over 17 years. Michael, thank you for joining us today. What an amazing event. Can you tell my viewers what are gravity waves all about?
Yeah, it comes about from Einstein's view of space. His view was that when you put a heavy object in space anywhere in the universe, it actually warps space-time itself. And for example, if you're traveling in a straight line toward our Earth, and as you get close to the Earth, all of a sudden you feel like you're being pulled toward the Earth.
Okay.
That was Newton's view of gravity. Mm-hmm. But Einstein said, no, what's happening is space-time itself is just being warped, and you're just falling downhill. The road has gone down, and you're traveling toward the Earth.
Okay, great. And I mean, unbelievable, just fantastic. And can you tell us a little bit about black holes and what they are?
Yeah, well, black holes, have the mass of tens of hundreds of suns, and they came about sometime during the early universe. Mm-hmm. Either stars collapsed or stars got sucked into each other, and all this huge mass got compressed down to a tiny little spot. And there's so much mass and such a high warping of space. Mm-hmm. We call that a heavy gravity field at that point. Anything that comes in the vicinity of these holes, light, for example, gets totally sucked up by the huge force fields of these things. It never makes it past. And so if you have some gravity, black holes in space, for example, if one of them is rotating around, or if you have two of them spiraling around each other, they are churning up space so fantastically, and that waves go out in spherical waves, traveling throughout the whole universe at the speed of light, and everything that they pass over, gets stretched and shrunk. Mm-hmm. There's peaks and valleys, as they move across the Earth. Mm-hmm. If you were here, you would oscillate. You would get a little bit taller, you get a little bit shorter. Your clock would run a little faster.
And I guess we are sometimes, as these are hitting us.
Yeah. But they're so weak that you never realize this.
Right. So tell us, what does LIGO stand for? And you said something about it has legs.
Well, one thing I didn't tell you is that LIGO is a device for measuring these gravity waves. Mm-hmm. And just to set the stage, in 2015, we measured the first gravity wave, and I'll explain in a moment how this instrument does it. We measured the first gravity wave, and it had come from two black holes that were oscillating around each other for eons of time, but finally during the last half a second, the waves were strong enough, because they're so weak, that they get weaker and weaker as you get farther away from the source that causes them. Mm-hmm. But finally during the last half a second, these two black holes were whipping around each other at half the speed of light, and there was just a huge disturbance of space-time at that point, and more energy than all the stars in the whole universe came out, the peak energy. And finally, when they passed across the Earth, they were able to move our instrument, and we could detect it. So the way we do that, you mentioned the arms. We have an instrument that's called an interferometer, and you start with a laser beam, and you go through a partially transmitting mirror called a beam splitter. Half the light goes through the beam splitter, the other half bounces off at right angles, and then we let the light of those two beams go down 2.5 miles long to a mirror at each end, and then the mirror bounces the light back toward the beam splitter, and then they come together and they recombine. And so if you adjust the length of the arms so that they're exactly a half a wavelength shorter or longer than each other, all the light that comes back and recombines with the beam splitter goes back to where it came from, to the laser. And no light goes out the other side of the beam splitter. But if anything changes the length of those arms, ever so slightly, then some light will go out what we call the dark port.
Right.
And we can detect that with a photodetector, and that's our gravity wave signal.
Okay. Well, tell me, what was your role at LIGO? What were you doing there?
Yeah. I was the garbage collector for scattered light.
The garbage collector for scattered light. Okay, that was clear. Maybe you can explain it to some of our viewers who may not know what that means.
Yeah, it turns out that my role at LIGO was something called auxiliary optical systems, and I was responsible for doing things to create sample beams from the interferometer that we could use to control the mirrors themselves. And so I made other beam splitters and to bring these beams out, but the beams were very large, so I had to make some telescopes to reduce the size of the beam down so that when it finally got outside it was manageable size. But in the process of doing all of this, every place that these beams pass, you got scattering from the surfaces. The surfaces are not perfectly smooth, so light scatters, and if some of this light scatters back into the interferometer, it disturbs the interferometer beam itself, and it looks like a gravity wave. So it's very crucial that we be able to control the scattered light and not let it get back in the interferometer. So my role was to do that. And so I had to make things called beam dumps and baffles throughout the whole interferometer to catch every tiny piece of scattered light anywhere in the interferometer and make sure it didn't get back in the interferometer. So that's why I say I was a garbage collector for scattered light.
Great. So how did you get involved in such a fantastic project? What got you involved from the beginning? I know you've been there 17 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I was really fortunate to be hired by LIGO. I was kind of surprised that I applied for this job that they advertised, and they interviewed me at Caltech. I said, "Oh my God, I'm never going to get hired by this prestigious university." Right. Because I had just quit my job as a physics professor for 6 years. Actually, I resigned because the dean of the faculty thought I was stressing out the biology students.
All right. Okay.
Trying to make.
I'm sure you were stressing them out. Yeah.
I was supposed to make them learn physics, but apparently they weren't prepared for that.
That was the old days for teaching.
But anyway, it turned out that I'd had such a wild career leading up to being a physics professor. I started a laser company. I worked for aerospace. I was an aerospace consultant. The last thing I did, along the way, I invented eye surgery instruments. And whole career working with optics and lasers and that kind of stuff. I was a mechanical engineer by training, and then my whole career was doing optical engineering. But then finally, in the last 6 years, I became a physicist, essentially, by being the head of the physics program. And so when I interviewed the LIGO people, they said, "Oh, here's a guy that has such a crazy background that he can probably solve any of the problems that we may have in the future." So I think that's why they hired me.
Great. And I'm you must be very excited about the important role you played in discovering these gravity waves and from merging black holes and coalescing neutron stars. I understand you also that they also had a special breakthrough prize, and I was just wondering how much money you got out of that.
That was pretty amazing. A lot of awards were given as soon as we discovered this first black hole in 2015, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the co-authors of the earth-shattering paper that was published. And so as a result of that, there was kind of a waterfall of prizes that occurred. One of the prizes, which was quite significant, was called the Breakthrough in Science Prize, and in 2013, this was given to Stephen Hawking.
Oh, right.
So I was really in good company. Right. It turned out that about 1,000 of us shared a $2 million prize.
Oh, nice.
So I got a check for almost $2,000. That was
fantastic.
Pretty good.
Fantastic. Yeah. Now I know that you're almost done writing some memoirs and publishing a book, and I see you have a copy of it over here. tell us a little bit about the book. When is it going to be ready, and how can people buy a copy of it?
Here's the, I don't know if you can see it, but
Yep, they can.
Here's the book.
To Catch a Black Hole from the Bottom of the Pond.
Yeah. That sounds like a crazy title, but the whole idea behind the book is I wanted to share my experiences with the world, but also I thought it was really important that the little unheralded workers like myself should get credit for the work that they've done. And there's this, you may be familiar with the Dr. Seuss children's story, Yertle the Turtle.
Sure, of course.
And Yertle, the king of the turtles, commanded his turtles in the pond, over 5,000 of them, to stack up and form a huge pyramid so that he could stand on top and be higher than the moon.
Right, okay.
And so he was surveying his kingdom, but little Mac down at the bottom was about to get crushed. And finally Mac burped, and the whole pyramid fell apart, and King Yertle fell in the mud.
Right.
And so I wanted to give credit to all the little turtles that held the 3 Nobel Prize winners up on their back, because without us, they never would have made it.
Well, it doesn't seem like anyone burped, because they won.
Yeah, so I say thank God we didn't burp.
Great. So tonight, in a couple of hours, is the main gala, which, it seems like the main gala is going on now, and I understand you're doing a little presentation there as well.
Yeah, we're going to have this wonderful banquet, and the Nobel Prize winners will not be here because they're going to be at the grand ball dancing with the king and queen.
Right, okay.
So, unfortunately, we weren't invited.
We'll be here with 1,000 turtles.
We're going to be with the turtles.
Excellent.
We weren't invited to do that. But anyway, at the end of our little banquet here, some of us have been asked to give a little talk about what we remember about the Nobel Prize winners themselves. And, of course, since I was working there for 17 years, I interacted with all of them.
Right, okay.
And so I have some little anecdotes that I'd like to share.
So the book's ready. We can buy it now, or
no, you can't.
No, okay.
This is the fourth draft that I've got here.
Okay.
And there's probably going to be one or two more drafts, especially the Nobel Prize stuff that's gone on. That's going to go in the epilogue of the book.
Right. Okay.
So this will be up to date.
So we got another month before we can get a copy of this.
So I'm hoping that maybe February, that time frame, that I'll be able to publish this. So it's getting heavier and heavier and heavier.
I can see that.
I can hardly carry it, but anyway, it's been a lot of fun writing this book.
So as soon as it's ready, we'll do another little interview of how to buy it. I guess they can buy it. We'll be able to buy it
on Amazon.
Okay, it'll be on Amazon. Good.
And hopefully they're going to advertise it in all the major bookstores. So,
right, excellent.
So we'll have to see.
Okay, well, Mike, congratulations and to the laureates for such a fantastic job in 17 years, and let's go to the gala now.